Welcome back for another chapter from Appleseed Farm. This book was written by Emily Taft Douglas, and if I recall, it was written in the 1940s, a long time ago. Let me find, I think it was 1948. How about that? This chapter, if you remember the last chapter that I read, chapter 2, they met, almost all of the Bartletts anyway, met Johnny Appleseed. Ned and Ada and Mrs. Bartlett were the ones that were down at the spring and had met this strange man, but they knew he was a friend. They invited him back for supper, and that leads me right into chapter 3 that is called A Dinner Guest. Her mother was right, Ada thought as they sat down to dinner. There was nothing tasty to offer a guest and nothing with which to celebrate a birthday. They ate the mess of fish which Ned had caught the day before and the cornmeal pudding, same as always. And yet with Johnny Appleseed facing her, the world looked strangely bright to Ada. Ada's father had welcomed their guest, for the burlap sack shirt made no difference to him. "Everyone in the West knows about you, Johnny Appleseed," he declared as they ate. "Only last month I was over at our trading center, and one of the settlers who happened in there had told about how you saved his life." And here's a little picture of the family eating together. You can see the fire in the background and Johnny Appleseed right across from Ada. Tom Bartlett turned toward his family to tell them the story. The settler said that he had been attacked by Indians and left to die in a field. He managed to crawl back home, and there he found his wife in bed with her newborn baby. There they were, the man and his wife, just as helpless as that baby, and all three of them might have died if Johnny Appleseed hadn't happened in. "You dropped from heaven, that family swears," Mr. Bartlett said to his guest. "The settler told how you bound up his wounds and got him into bed and washed the baby and cared for the mother, and then you went out and hunted up the cow that had wandered away, milked her, and fed the whole lot of them. No wonder that man believes Johnny Appleseed was sent by God." "Maybe so," the old man nodded. "I'm sure God can make use of the least of us. And most everywhere I go in the backwoods, I stumble on some kind of trouble." "Yes?" asked Tom Bartlett. "But if there hasn't been any tomahawking or newborn baby, but just the usual backwood trouble, what can you do?" "That's harder," Johnny Appleseed admitted. "Sometimes what folks need only comes with years of hard work and love," he added strangely. "Then what I can offer maybe doesn't seem to help much at first." Ada saw her father fix their guest with a sharp look. "All right," he demanded. "What's our trouble? What do you suggest?" All of the family turned to Johnny Appleseed for his answer. If only this man who had helped so many others could show them how to mend their fortunes. Ada took a deep, trembling breath. It seemed to her that their whole future rested on his answer. Johnny Appleseed finished his cornmeal pudding. Then he smiled across the table at Tom Bartlett. "Of course I think of my own trade," he began. "It crossed my mind that you folks would be happier if you had an orchard. I have the makings of one in my knapsack." A few hours earlier, Ada would have laughed at this answer. Even now, she could not see how an orchard would change their luck, but she put her faith in Johnny Appleseed. "Please, Pa," she cried, blindly supporting her friend. "Yes, let's try an orchard," urged Mrs. Bartlett. "We all want an orchard," shouted Ned, "and deep dish apple pies." Tom Bartlett stared around the table. He was surprised and vexed. "So you've been making plans without me," he accused his family. "You've talked this over, and not one of you minds adding a new load to my back. There are plenty of things it would be nice to have if we had hired men and gardeners, but there's only one man here to do all the work, and that's me." He thumped his chest. Then he turned to his guest. "I don't thank you for this, Johnny Appleseed. All this year, I've done the work of 2 men. He went on, growing really angry. "I cleared this place, broke the sod, planted it, then built this house. Oh, it's a poor enough shack, worse than I ever meant to offer my wife, and the food has been scarce too. All the same, I've slaved every waking minute. My rewards? debts, a dead cow, a little grave out yonder. And then you come along talking orchards. Orchards! Shouldn't we have a flower garden too? I have flower seeds in my pack, Johnny Appleseed answered gravely. Still, the prettiest ones grow wild here. Lupine, violets, and the wild rose, first cousin to the apple blossom. Flowers, apple blossom, sputtered Tom Bartlett. You don't know the meaning of trouble. Do you think we can live on flowers and orchards? You can live a lot happier if you have them, the old man insisted. It would be a little bit like home, Mrs. Bartlett said, like New England and our old home. You too, her husband reproached her. Can't you see this isn't New England and this never will be? It's the wilderness and we can't afford apples. In a drought like last summer, we'd have to water the seedlings every day, and I haven't the time to carry the water from the spring for the whole orchard of trees. I'll do it, Ned offered. Ada and I would raise the trees. There's plenty else for you to do, snapped his father. You forget most of your chores as it is. No, I don't thank you for suggesting such notions, he told his guest. Whatever other people say, we have no time for orchards here. That's final. To make his meaning clear, he banged the table with his large, calloused hand. That bang, to Ada, meant more than just no orchard. It meant things would never change. Perhaps it meant the same to her mother, too, for suddenly Mrs. Bartlett pushed back her chair, rose, and faced her husband. Nothing, she cried. Nothing for us ever but wilderness? Then she rushed out of the cabin. Tom Bartlett stared. He got up from the table and followed her. When he came back a few minutes later, he shook his head in a puzzled way. She's not been herself since the little one died, he explained. Johnny Appleseed nodded. It's hard to transplant grown trees, he said, and maybe it's the same with women. But speaking of planting, what are you putting in your fields this spring? Corn, of course. Maybe some potatoes, cabbages, and turnips. Corn mostly, Tom Bartlett agreed, glad to change the subject. But if we have another drought and animal pests like last year, it won't matter what I plant. I know a few tricks about fences that animals can't get through in a hurry, Johnny Appleseed told them. And I'm strong, even if I am an old man. Maybe I could lend you a hand this afternoon. Tom Bartlett brightened at the offer. Maybe you could. Ned ought to get some more fish for supper, and I do need another pair of hands. Ada's hopes began to rise again. Then Johnny Appleseed will be spending the night with us, she said. We'd be proud to have him, her father quickly agreed, for he was a little ashamed of his outburst. He picked up his rifle as usual and started out. Johnny Appleseed looked at him curiously. I thought we were going out to plow, not hunt, he said. So we are, nodded Tom Bartlett, but there is one thing I plant in my field every day, and that's my rifle. There are still Indians lurking in these parts, as well as wolves. And here you can see a little photo or a little drawing, and it looks like Mr. Bartlett working in the field. And of course, he just said he always takes his gun with him. Johnny Appleseed, who traveled everywhere without a weapon, said nothing. As he left the house, he patted Ada's brown head, now topped by a pink ribbon. It just may be, he murmured, that we'll have some real birthday celebrating this evening after all. Then, with a thin mongrel dog at his heels, he followed her father to the field. Ned grinned after the pair. He had forgotten the burlap shirt by now and half fancied that he himself had discovered their guest. I tell you, he promised, our friend Johnny Appleseed will bring us luck. Ada was sure of this, although at that moment she did not feel very lucky. Johnny Appleseed was her particular friend. Now he had gone to the field with her father, and Ned, forgetting this morning's promise, was going off for the afternoon with his fishing rod. Since her mother had not yet come back, there was nothing for Ada to do but keep house. A fine way to spend her birthday. And that's the end of Chapter 3. Talk to you again soon.